here in just a moment. But it says, and he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High. Think to change times and laws, and they shall be given into his hand until time and times and the dividing of time. So here's the key. Satan, I'm going to say it real clear, Satan is trying to get you out of alignment with your unlocked kingdom destiny. I'm going to say it again. Satan, he's after the time. He wants to get you a day late and a dollar short. He wants you to get offended, not feeling loved. And realistically, let's be honest, none of us are comfortable with all the transformation to our vision, our character, and the expansion. Anytime there's great growth, which is happening right now, there's always a great amount of pain that will come and suffering, because it's difficult to make changes. You have to exercise your faith at a higher level. You have to exercise all your character and your integrity at a higher level. You're having to make commitments and say yes to things that you can't possibly do in your own strength. But you know, it's one of those things where you have to trust that I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. But we're in a season right now, and the reason I'm giving this warning to you, and the reason I want you to share it, and the reason I want you to be able to share it, particularly with pastors and leaders, is you need to do the prayer that I'm going to do at the end of this, breaking this assignment out of the pit of hell that is coming against this biblical year, 5786, coming up here in just a few weeks. We need not to be distracted, wounded, or offended, and not having our feet under the Lord's table for Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Sukkot. Excuse me. We need to be in that place.
Some kind of weird scenario to where there might be an interpretation to where this evidence looks like artificiality or anything like that. It is an obvious conclusion that can be drawn from the data. Is it the only conclusion? Might there be a natural reason that all of this is happening? Yes. But once again, the natural reasons, the natural explanation for 3iATLAS and its odd composition and behavior is every bit as unlikely as the artificial one, perhaps even more so, implying that humanity is not at risk from alien technology. But on the other hand, humanity desperately needs a wake-up call to avoid self-destruction. So what is a possible artificial interpretation for what we're seeing with 3iATLAS right now? Well, as I mentioned in previous episodes, there is a deep astronomical mystery that to this day has not been solved regarding vanishing dust in a solar system that appeared to be evolving like so many other solar systems do, and then all of a sudden the entire protoplanetary disk around the star vanished completely in the space of just a few years. The system was called TYC8241-2652-1. In 1983, it appeared to be a naturally evolving solar system, but by 2008, there was a noticeable change in the amount of dust in the protoplanetary disk, a lot less than there was in 1983. And then 2 years later, even that dust completely vanished. We are talking about 10 to the 22nd power kilograms of material suddenly vanishing in the space of just a few years. The leading natural hypotheses like runaway accretion, radiation blowout, or grain growth completely fails to explain the rapid final drop, especially in material from 2008 to 2010. A black hole is a very unlikely scenario due to the absence of observable consequences like X-ray emissions, gravitational lensing, or dynamical disruptions, which would have been detected. So what could have possibly caused all of this material to vanish? Well, what if we're talking about a machine civilization with self-replicating nanomachines harvesting all of this material? And by the way, we're talking enormous amounts of valuable material, including carbon and especially metals being used to perhaps self-replicate, like the so-called Van Neumann probe or the monolith from 2001: A Space Odyssey, that creates duplicates of itself so it's able to spread throughout the galaxy, which this haze appears to be. It appears to be that large. There is a substantial amount of material, both in terms of dust and small asteroids in a region this large, especially in interplanetary space, and the amount of that material increases as you get closer to the sun. That would explain why we see this radical increase in nickel production and also cyanide production as the object moves closer and closer to the sun. In addition to that, there's a lot of carbon dioxide coming from 3iATLAS. What if there are living organisms, or if 3iATLAS is a living organism itself, consuming the carbon in space dust and other materials being gathered by these nanomachines? A living organism consuming all of this carbon might produce a CO2 byproduct, very much like the label release experiment that was sent to Mars. Nutrients being introduced into the Martian regolith produced CO2 byproducts, which were detected by the label release experiment. Living organisms can produce CO2 once they've consumed nutrients. The nutrients in interplanetary space being the carbon present in space dust and asteroids. What if that is what we're actually observing? Sure, a wild theory, but in my opinion, no more wild than all of the improbable natural explanations that we've seen thus far that explain nickel without iron, CO2 without water, and especially without carbon monoxide. This requires an exotic comet of titanic proportions, unlike anything we have ever seen before. And while I acknowledge that this sort of thing might exist in interstellar space, because we've seen precious few interstellar objects in the time that we've been looking for them, in my opinion, the artificial biological alternative is just as likely or just as worthy of close inspection. What do you think? Well, feel free to leave a comment while you're hitting that subscribe button and also that like and notification bell.
Extremely fast, that if this hypothesis is to be correct, left the Earth from that location. Again, gold and silver is highly conductive, maybe traveled through some pre-existing super enriched scene and then shot straight to the sun, and we got this solar flare to launch out right from 4199. Look at that plasma burst, okay? So it was more than a flare. Look how quickly the plasma wave went before the flare. So that plasma wave actually launched immediately after that earthquake. Maybe it was even like some sort of gravity wave. That travels at the speed of light. Gravity travels at the speed of light. So some very interesting things. We also had a solar radio burst right at that time. So let's look at our specific 10.7 centimeter radio frequency data here. And this is, basically just a text document. We'll look at a graph next, but to give you the precise time, here we have 2000 universal time. That flare peaked at 1950, okay? So this is right effectively taking a measurement at the peak of that solar flare, that 2.7 M flare, okay? Look at this. We are 219 solar flux units for our 2.8 gigahertz or 2800 megahertz or 10.7 centimeter wavelength light, which is one of our preferred measures of solar flux. It's our primary solar indice. And we see right there at 2000, it bumped to 317 and then back down to 230. So we caught that solar flare perfectly with our solar flux data. Here's the graph, so you can really see it. Look at where we were back in July. This all got basically squished flat in terms of its variation because of this ramp up here at the very end of August. We were hovering around 240, and then we spiked to about over, I think it said 315. We spiked over 300 for that burst and came right back down, but we are right there at about 230 or so. So very, very high solar flux. These are radio frequency energies. So again, 2.8 gigahertz. Oh, that sounds familiar. It's like the 2.4 gigahertz of your Wi-Fi router, except it's 0.4 gigahertz higher. Alignment right there. We also have kind of this Mars, Mercury, Venus line there, which is interesting. But this, I think, is very clearly some sort of zap from the Earth, or that went through the Earth, which then also hit the sun at the same time. So yeah, and actually, let's look at an antipode map, okay? Because if this went through the Earth, then let's see what's on the opposite side of Nevada. Pretty close to this island there. See that island? French and Southern Antarctic lands. Okay, that's what we have. So yeah, a lot of powerful energies coming in at this moment in time. As we can see with our solar flux, a big radio burst. Sunspot numbers are over 200, getting close to 220 again.
Temperature. At certain temperatures, it can undergo significant deformation and recover its shape without permanent damage, making it highly elastic. And once again, nickel waste is produced with no other metal byproducts in the construction of this material, and it's utilized in a variety of different applications, such as medical stents, guide wires, orthodontic wires, where its flexibility and shape memory are critical, also actuators in aerospace and components that exploit its shape-changing properties, and then things like eyeglass frames and temperature-sensitive actuators. And why is there no iron? Well, because it would interfere with the precise phase transformation required for its shape memory and super elastic properties. Nickel and titanium specific atomic interactions drive these behaviors, and iron's presence could disrupt the lattice structure. And only nickel waste is produced in the manufacture of this particular smart metal at a rate of about 11 kilograms for every kilogram of waste that is produced. Now, I crunched some numbers and determined that based on the amount of material that we are seeing right now, about half a metric ton of nickel is being produced by 3iATLAS, and at a ratio of roughly 10:1 waste to finished product with nickel titanium, about 50 kilograms or so worth of nickel titanium could be produced on 3iATLAS with this much nickel resulting from the production. That's just one example of industrial processes that could create this much nickel with no other metals being present. And what about the cyanide? Well, interestingly enough, that chemical is also used in the production of a variety of different types of metals. Although cyanide is mainly used for gold and silver extraction, it can also be used in electroplating baths to form stable metal cyanide complexes, which are essential for depositing metal coatings onto other materials, a technique relevant to many advanced applications. It's also utilized in steel manufacturing and in metal polishing processes. And assuming the 3iATLAS is an alien asteroid ship of some kind, then what might they be using all this metal for? Why might they need it? Well, we'll get to that in just a little bit. Let's go ahead and finish up the article. On October 3rd, 2025, 3iATLAS will pass within 29 million kilometers from the high-rise camera on board the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, which will be able to image it with a 30 kilometer per pixel resolution. By the way, this is very close to Mars, and 3iATLAS is passing quite close to Jupiter as well. Much less than 1 astronomical unit. Again, very strange that this is happening all by chance, but in any event, this camera might be able to image 3iATLAS with a 30 kilometer per pixel resolution. Such an image could separate the contributions of the nucleus and coma to the reflected sunlight and constrain with greater confidence the size of the nucleus. So all NASA has to do is turn the damn camera around on October 3rd, 2025, and we might be able to dismiss the debate as to just how big the nucleus of this strange object is.
Author King of the Britons, your Knights of the Round Table shall have a task to make them an example in these dark times.
Good idea, O Lord.
Of course it's a good idea!